moments in life when all you want is for someone to tell you that you're making the right decision. You want someone who's already lived your life to sit across from you and say, keep going, this works out. Or maybe they would stop you and say, don't do it, you're about to make a mistake. But that person never really arrives. No one comes from the future to tell us whether we chose the right career, the right relationship, the right city, or the right time to start over. We make that decision with the information we have, and then we live long enough to discover what that decision meant. That is both the privilege and the burden of being alive. Hi, I am Mehak, your host, and this is Things We Never Say, a podcast about the conversations we avoid, the emotional patterns we repeat, and the things we all feel but rarely say out loud. Today, I want to talk about indecision. Not because I think making the wrong decision is the biggest problem, I think waiting for certainty is. I have spent the last 8 months living in that space between knowing something needed to change and being terrified of actually changing it. Every day, I would wake up thinking about the same questions. Should I leave my job? Should I keep building the career I had spent working towards? Should I take a chance on writing and psychology? Two things that became more exciting than anything I had done before. I wanted certainty. I wanted someone to tell me that if I resigned, everything would work out. I wanted someone to promise me that I would not regret it. And I did what everyone does. I asked everyone, my friends, my family, people who had been through a career change, probably AI a few more times than I would like to admit. Every conversation gave me another perspective. Every opinion helped me understand the situation a little better, but none of them answered the question I actually wanted answered. Because no matter how many opinions you collect, eventually there is one decision that only one person gets to make, you. That is the strange thing about adulthood. You spend years believing that one day someone will tell you what the right answer is, or maybe one morning you will just wake up with the right answer. Then you realize that that doesn't happen, and nobody really knows what they're doing. Not your parents, not your manager, not the people on the internet, not even the people who seem completely confident. They are making decisions with incomplete information too. They're just making peace with the fact that certainty is not coming. And I think that's where so much of our anxiety comes from. We are not just trying to make a decision, we are trying to eliminate the possibility of regret. We are trying to guarantee that 5 years from now we'll look back and say, this was exactly the right choice. But life does not offer those guarantees, it only offers choices. And something I've slowly realized over the past year is that maybe confidence does not come before a decision. Maybe confidence is something we build after we have made one. To explain why I believe that, I need to tell you a story. About 8 months ago, I had what looked like a great life. I was working as an interior designer, I was leading projects that I was genuinely proud of. If you had asked the version of me who had just graduated from architecture school what success looked like, this would have been very close to the answer. Nothing was obviously wrong, but every evening I came back to a place that never really felt like home. My friends had moved away, my family lived somewhere else, and I wasn't really lonely because I was physically alone. I was lonely because my life no longer felt connected to the people who mattered most to me. For a long time, I could not understand what the problem was. Had I chosen the wrong career? Had I been living in the wrong city? Was the job wrong? Were my friends wrong? Was I wrong? What was happening? I did not know. But eventually, I realized something that completely changed the way I looked at my life. The problem was not a single thing. And that realization did not happen overnight. It happened quietly in small moments that did not seem important at the same time. I'd come home after work and realize I had no one to tell about my day. Weekends did not feel like a break anymore. They felt like something I had to get through before Monday arrived again. I mean, who does not like weekends? I waited to be in the office because there were people that I could talk to. And that's a strange feeling because from the outside, everything looked fine. I had the job I had worked for, I was learning, I was growing. People would probably look at my life and say she's doing well. Some people actually have said that to my face. And they would not have been wrong. That's what made the decision so difficult. It's much easier to leave something that's obviously broken. It's much harder to leave something that's good enough. I think that's a place where a lot of us get stuck. We wait for life to become unbearable before we give ourselves permission to change it. We tell ourselves it's not that bad. There are people who have it much worse. I should just be grateful. And all of those things can be true. You can be grateful and still know that something is not working. Around that time, I started writing on Substack. Not because I want to become a writer, not because I had some grand business plan. Honestly, I just needed somewhere to hear my own thoughts. When everything in your head is noisy, writing is a very good way of separating what's actually true from what's just fear. I had also been studying psychology alongside architecture for years because I had always been fascinated by why we think the way we do, why two people can experience the exact same situations and walk away with completely different stories about it, why we repeat the same patterns, why changing our lives is often much harder than deciding we want to. Writing became the place where all of those interests met. And the more I wrote, the more I realized something that surprised me. I was not trying to escape architecture. I was trying to build a life that felt more like mine. And those are very different problems. Because if the problem is your career, you change careers. But if the problem is your life, changing jobs might not solve anything. Eventually, I asked my company if I could work remotely. They said yes. I packed my things and moved back home. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some loss of independence, maybe less control over my life, a lack of a social circle. What I did not expect was how quickly I felt like myself again. I was relieved. And the funny thing is that my work was the same. I still had the same meetings, the same responsibilities, the same deadlines, same long days. But every evening, instead of going back to an empty apartment, I came home. I was at home. I would just wander into the next room and have people there who loved me. It became conversations over dinner, hearing my parents in the next room, fighting with my sibling, small routines that I had not realized I had missed. And I came back to a place where I did not have to earn my belonging. And that changed something inside me. For years, I thought independence meant moving away, living alone, paying my own bills, building a life without needing anyone. That's the version of independence I grew up admiring. But coming back home completely changed the definition. I realized independence isn't about how far away you live from the people you love. It's about having the freedom to choose the life that genuinely feels right for you. For some people, that might mean moving across the world. For me, it meant coming back. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. And that's the core of independence, right? Doing something because you want to do it, not because you need to do it. That was the first time I felt like I was making a decision for myself instead of simply following the path that had been laid out in front of me. But here's the thing, realizing what you want does not automatically make the decision easy. If anything, it makes it harder. Because now you know what you're walking away from. For months, I kept going back and forth. Should I resign? Should I wait another year? Should I save more money? Should I keep doing this until I felt more certain? Every week, I convinced myself of something different. One day, I would think, this is obviously the right decision. Next day, I would think, maybe I'm about to throw away a career that people spend years trying to build. It felt like my mind was running a debate that never ended. I remember waiting for that feeling of certainty. I genuinely thought that there would be one morning where I would just wake up and I would know. There would be no anxiety left, no second guessing, no wondering if I was making a huge mistake. I would just know that it was time to leave. That morning never came. Around a month ago, though, I resigned. And if I'm being completely honest, I still don't know if it was the right decision. I don't know what my life is going to look like 2 years from now. I don't know if psychology will become my full time career. I don't know if writing will continue to grow. There are so many things I don't know. But I don't think that's actually the point anymore. I used to believe that good decisions felt certain before you made them. Now I think good decisions become good because of what you do after you have made them. Once I started thinking about it like that, I became really curious about why making decisions is so difficult in the first place. Because it's not just me. Some of you listening are probably trying to decide whether to leave a relationship, whether to move cities, whether to take a job, whether to start something you've been putting off for years. Some of you might even be stuck deciding over things that seem much smaller than that. And the thing is, psychology has a bit to say about this too. One of the personality traits that's linked to indecision is something called neuroticism. If you have ever come across the big five personality traits, neuroticism is one of them. People who score higher on it tend to experience anxiety, self doubt, and worry more intensely. So, when they're making a decision, they're not just thinking about what could go right. Their brain is also very good at imagining everything that could go wrong. Another reason can be quite simple. If you grew up in a family where most of your decisions were made for you, you don't really get many chances to build trust in your own judgment. You become so used to asking someone else if your decision is okay before you believe that it is, that one day you are 25 or 35 or 40 or 50 and you're standing in a supermarket trying to decide which cereal to buy, and somehow even that feels like it needs to be the right choice and needs validation from someone else. I know that sounds funny, but I think we have all experienced some version of it. For me though, I think perfectionism played a much bigger role. It wasn't that I could not make a decision. It was that I did not want to make the wrong one. There is a difference. I wanted to know that if I left my job, I would never regret it. I wanted to know that if I chose psychology, it would definitely work out. I wanted guarantees that life was never going to give me. And when you're looking for guarantees, every option starts looking risky. You make pros and cons list. You ask five different people what they think. Then you ask five more because maybe someone else will finally tell you what to do. You keep researching because it feels productive. It feels like you are moving closer to an answer. But sometimes you don't feel like you're moving closer at all. You're just getting better at imagining alternatives. That's actually a concept in psychology called the paradox of choice. The basic idea is that when we have too many good options, making a decision does not necessarily become easier. Sometimes it becomes harder because now we are comparing every other option against every other option. And even after we have chosen, we keep wondering whether one of the options we left behind might have made us happier. I think we have all done that. You buy something and then spend the next hour looking at the things you did not buy. You choose one career and keep wondering what would have happened if you had picked another. You say yes to one city and imagine the life you could have had somewhere else. Sometimes the decision itself isn't what makes us unhappy, it's that we never stop comparing it to the life we did not choose. There is another study I came across that I found really interesting. Researchers asked people to choose a poster to take home. Simple, right? Just a poster. One group was told to carefully explain why they were choosing that particular poster. The other group was simply told to pick the one they liked. When they checked back later, the people who had just gone with their instinct were actually happier with their choice. They were more likely to put the poster up on their wall and keep it there. The people who had spent time analyzing their reasons were less satisfied with what they'd chosen. It's a simple study, and obviously, choosing a poster is not the same as choosing a career or deciding whether to end a relationship. But I think it points to something interesting. Sometimes, after a certain point, more analysis does not give us more clarity. It just gives us more reasons to doubt ourselves. There is one small change I've made over the past few months that has genuinely changed the way I make decisions. Whenever I catch myself thinking, what if everything goes wrong, I don't try to stop the thought anymore. I just finish it differently. Instead of asking, what if psychology does not work out, I ask, even if psychology does not work out, then what? Even if it doesn't, I still have my architecture degree. Even if it doesn't, I know how to work. Even if it doesn't, I can get another job. It might not be the life I'm trying to build, but it also would not be the end of my life. And strangely, that's where my mind starts to calm down. Because the fear was never really about psychology not working. The fear was that one decision could ruin everything. Once I realized that was not true, I noticed another question replaced the first one. Instead of asking what if everything goes wrong, I started asking what can I do to make this go right. And those are very different conversations to have with yourself. The first one keeps you standing exactly where you are, imagining every possible disaster. The second one quietly gets you moving. It makes you think about the work you can do today instead of the future you cannot control yet. I think another reason I was finally able to make the decision is because I look back at my own life. There have been so many moments where I thought, if this does not work out, everything will fall apart. And somehow it never did. Sometimes things worked out exactly the way I had hoped, sometimes they did not. But every single time I found another way forward. The evidence from my life wasn't telling me that everything would be easy, it was telling me that I would probably be okay. I still don't know if leaving my job was the right decision. I don't think anyone could know that. What I do know is that every day I get to make choices that increase the chances of it becoming the right decision. And somehow that feels much more useful than spending another month wondering whether I should have done it at all. The last thing that has helped me is a question I ask myself whenever I am making a decision that feels important. I stop thinking about the next year or next month or even the next year, and I imagine myself 5 years from now. Not because I think I can predict my future, I definitely cannot, but because it helps me separate from fear from direction. I ask myself, does this decision move me closer to the kind of person I want to become, the kind of life I want? Not will this definitely work, not will this be easy. Just is this moving me in the direction I want my life to go? Because if the answer is yes, that I know that even if this particular decision does not work out the way I imagined, I would still learn something that's taking me in the right direction. When I left my job, I was not choosing certainty. I was choosing alignment. Certainty is something we spend a lot of our lives chasing, but alignment is something we can choose today. And I think that's what I've been trying to say throughout the episode. We are taught to believe that somewhere out there is a perfect decision, one career that's exactly right, one city we are supposed to live in, one person we are supposed to be with, one path that if we can just find it, everything else will fall into place. I don't think life works that way anymore. I think there are many lives we could live, many careers we could enjoy, many places where we could build a home, many versions of ourselves that could become happy. That decision is not about discovering the one life that is waiting for us all along. It's about choosing one and then showing up for it. And maybe that's why no one comes from the future to tell us what to do. Not because the answer is being hidden from us, but because there is not one perfect answer. The future isn't waiting for us to find it. We are building it every day with the decisions we make, and just as importantly, with the effort we put into those decisions afterwards. So, if you're listening to this while you're stuck between two choices, I hope you stop waiting for certainty. I hope you stop asking whether you will regret it 5 years from now. Instead, ask yourself three questions. What if everything goes wrong? Then answer it. Even if everything goes on wrong, what would I do? And once you have answered that, ask yourself one final question. What can I do today to make this go right? Because that's the only part you have ever really had any control over. Thank you for spending your time with me. This has been the very first episode of Things We Never Say, and I honestly could not think of a better conversation to begin with. If this conversation stayed with you, I would love to hear your own story. What decisions are you sitting with right now? You can reply to this episode or find me on Substack, also called Things We Never Say, where these conversations continue every week. Until next time, please take care of yourself.